Hey everyone, welcome back to Big Strong Book. I'm Reed, and today we are going over chapter 21 of the Dragonbone share, Cold Comforts. So this does not begin right after the last chapter. It doesn't continue with Simon's perspective. It actually picks up with Dukas Grimner. So Dukas Grimner is doing a little bit of is he doing? He's doing a little bit of carving. That's the word I was looking for. He's doing a little bit of carving, and we understand from the end of the last chapter that Simon heard the man who kind of grabbed him and put a knife to his throat. The guy sounded like he was a Rimmersman. He was speaking their language. So now we get with Dukas Grimner, we get confirmation that this was in fact, and that Duke is Grimner's men. They were not the bandits that initially kind of were in the monastery. They were the ones that came in afterwards. They were not the ones that killed all the monks and everything. They killed the bandits. And even Dukas Grimner is, he is kind of confused as to who it was or who these men were, because he initially, of course, thought that they were some men of Scully, but they were not identified as such. And eventually a man comes over, Sludig. We're introduced to a man named Sludig, and they mention that they grabbed a boy and he's been yelling for Benna or Binnock. And when Grimner sees Simon, and Simon's almost in shock, as Grimner thinks to himself, looks like any poor peasant lout, except for those boots, which I'll wager he found at the Abbey. Why, in the name of Memor's Fountain, did Ainskaldir bring him? What am I supposed to do with him? Kill him? Keep him? Leave him to starve? And again, he's kind of bemoaning the fact that they don't have many witnesses left. And we do get again, because a good chunk of this chapter is from Grimner's perspective, we get confirmation of why he's out here, because of course Grimner was in the Hayholt for so long. He was growing restless and tired that he wasn't back out again. And it says, this is page 319. Well, it starts on page 319 here at the end. It says, so the possibilities had to be maintained that he and his men had been the targets. Why? And just as importantly, who? Grimner's enemies, Scully of Kaldskirk, being a prime example, were well known to him, and none of the bandits had been recognized as members of Scully's clan. Besides, Scully was gone back to Kaldskirk long ago, and how could he have known that Grimner, sick to death of inactivity and fearing for the safety of his duchy, would decide at last to confront Elias, and after an argument receive his reluctant royal permission to take his men north? We need you here, uncle, he told me. He knew I had stopped believing that long ago, just wanted to keep his eye on me, that's what I think. Still, Elias had not resisted anywhere near as strongly as the Duke had anticipated. The argument had seemed to Grimner only a matter of form, as though Elias had known the confrontation was coming and had decided to accede already. So then he decides to try to gain some perspective of what's going on, the nature of everything, and so he decides to talk to Simon, who he doesn't know. Simon, as we will see, Simon, of course, knows who Dukas Grimner is. He knows who he's talking to, but Simon is careful. Even though I am fairly certain at this point that Simon, from his observations in the Hayholt, knew that Grimner was not on the best of terms with Elias. I'm pretty sure Simon was at least maybe a little bit aware of that, but obviously not enough to straight up be like, hey, here's what happened, Morganus and and Joshua and all this. He wouldn't be ready to say that to him. And if because he doesn't truly know what Isgrimner uh, would do to him. And so he just tries to make up a story. He's like, I ran away from the Chandler in Urchester. I ran away from Malachias. And, oh, Binnock. And Simon just kind of making this up on the fly. Oh, you mean the name I was saying, Binnock? Oh, Binnock is my dog. I was looking for my dog. And he's going to Naglemund because he has a friend, a harper in Naglemund. And Isgrimner says, who? Who do you know? Well, of course, we know from many chapters ago at the coronation feast that Simon meets Sangfugal, who is the harper who's going up to Naglemund. And so Isgrimner's like, okay, like, I know Isgrimner knows who Sangfugal is, so he's like, okay, you know who the harper is. So there's some veracity to his story. And then Simon just kind of he goes to sleep and he's by himself for a while, so it jumps to his perspective. And he wonders what to do. So it says here, 324, should he stay with the Rimmersmen? It would seem foolish not to, but still, Simon was not yet totally sure of where the Duke stood. Isgrimner was going to Naglemund, but what if it was to arrest Joshua? Everybody at the Hayholt was forever talking about how loyal Isgrimner had been to King John, how he held the High King's ward more sacred than his own life. Where did he fit in with Elias? So as I mentioned before, kind of talking about that, Simon is thinking about this. He's trying to actively remember. And it's interesting because even more so than before, because clearly it was Elias, Priorites, Inch, Guthwolf, Breugar, those guys, they were clearly in Simon's mind aligned with Elias. But now he's maybe starting to see, and he's trying to ascertain the political scenario and situation for himself. And so he asks, where did Isgrimner fit in with Elias? Under no circumstances did Simon intend to tell what part he had played in Joshua's departure from the Hayhold, but things had a way of slipping out sometimes. Simon was dying to hear some news of the castle, of what had happened after Morgana's last gambit. Had Priorites lived? Inch? What had Elias told the people that had happened? But it was exactly those kind of questions, no matter how guilefully asked, that could drop him into boiling water. So then he goes back to sleep, or he goes to sleep, it's raining, and then he wakes up, and he kind of looks off in the distance, and he sees a guard who is making a grunting noise, and he realizes that the guard is starting to struggle for his life. And then these things start coming out of the ground. The ground opens up. There's these little creatures called Buken, like Bukken, Buken. And all of the Rimmersmen start freaking out. These little creatures start to come out everywhere across the ground. Simon is freaking out. He sees a dead man. He's able to grab the axe. He's trying to go and defend himself, and then he gets knocked on the ground. And then he sees in the distance a little man on a wolf, and he realizes, Binnabic. And then Binnabic comes up. He's like, basically, shut up. We've got to go. They can deal with themselves. We've got to get going. Like, I'm here to rescue you. I'm here to get you out of their camp. And what's very interesting is that, we've seen for the past few chapters that Simon has grown more, not I don't want to say caring, because Simon always had that ability within him, but he's grown more, maybe a little more sympathetic, maybe a little more empathetic than he was. I think of, when him and Binnabic first came to the monastery, and Simon's like, I am Simon, this is my friend Binnabic, and like, we will help you, we want to help you. Likewise here, as Binnabic is trying to get Simon, and he's telling him like, no, I know that this is happening, we have to go, and Simon says, but essentially Simon's like, we have to help them. Like these creatures that are coming out of the ground and trying to kill us all over there, we've got to come back. And Benedict stays his hand. So we're seeing, I mean, Simon, I do think this is character growth and character change, because Simon, before at least, was probably a little bit on the self-centered side. And so Benedict is like, okay, we have no time to waste, and then and then Benedict reveals something crucial, and we learn that Simon's trust in Benedict is fully realized and fully it's affirmed, because Benedict says, "It was my bound promise to protect you. That was Dr. Morganus' wish." Doctor? You know Dr. Morganus? As Simon started, mouth working, Benedict stopped and whistled twice. Kantaka, with a last ecstatic shiver, flung two of the creatures aside and bounded toward them. "Now run, foolish boy." And they go off into the stormy night. And so that is the end of chapter 21. So, interesting things. I don't really have a whole lot of spoilers. Mainly this chapter, we get answers to a little more of the Isgrimner-Elias conflict. We get some more answers to that. So I think that was interesting to hear that. And we are now really starting to see character development already within Simon, where he was kind of more of a whiny, more of a selfish, self-centered kitchen boy before, but now he's thinking of others. He wants to go back and think about this. He is the kid who had to run away from Morganus and Inch and Priorites, and as all those guys converged, and he ran and he ran and he ran away from the trouble. But now it's almost like that instilled in him the desire to want to run into those situations to save people, because he lost somebody like Morganus. So I noticed that. I'm pretty fairly certain that was intentional development. That's chapter 21. Again, no, I don't think any spoilers, conversations for this chapter. So chapter 21, let me know what you think, and I will see you guys next time for chapter 22.